Hi and welcome to MedC Lectures. Let's learn bronchiectasis today. We shall discuss the definition followed by pathology, clinical presentation of the patients, investigation and how to treat bronchiectasis followed by two multiple choice questions. Let's begin with the definition of bronchiectasis. It lies in the two terms bronchos and ectasis, which are taken from Greek. Broncho stands for airways and ectasis means widening. So it is a chronic condition where there is persistent, irreversible widening or dilatation of both the larger airways and the smaller airways. What actually happens? There is a destruction of the airway wall. The airway wall consists of cartilage, elastic tissue and muscular tissue, and it happens as a result of damage happening to the airway wall lining or following an airway infection and inflammation. Let's look at the pathology. There is some injury happening to the airway wall, either in the form of inflammation or a direct infection, which destroys the epithelial lining and also the mucociliary action, which is responsible for flushing any secretions in the airway. As a result of inflammation, there is hypersecretion of mucus into the airways, which plugs the airways and also gives a medium for the organisms to grow. On a long-term basis, a vicious cycle happens where the organisms colonize and aggravate the infection, or there is more inflammatory reaction taking place, and after a long time it destroys the airway wall, causing it to scar and thicken, later widening the airways with a lot of mucus. That's what's happening in bronchiectasis patients. Now coming to types of bronchiectasis, there are different types of classification. First is focal or diffuse. Focal is a very specified area of the lung is affected. Diffuse shows a larger area is affected. Or depending on the types of anatomical changes happening in the airways. It gets distended as we said. Okay, so here we see the cylindrical type, varicose type and the cystic. These are often clearly visible on a high resolution CT. There are other forms like the tubular also in this category. The third kind of classification is primary or secondary. Primary when it is a result of direct infection, for example adenovirus infection, or secondary when bronchiectasis is caused due to an underlying disease, which is often cystic fibrosis in the European world and TB in the Asian countries. Now, after understanding the types of bronchiectasis, let's look at the causes. Underlying causes can be broadly classified based on the lung lobe affected. Upper lobe is often cystic fibrosis or TB. Cystic fibrosis can also affect the central lobe. ABPA, which is the allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, it can present often in the central lobe and the central airways. And congenital anomalies can also affect the central lobe. While if it's lower lobe bronchiectasis, we have to rule out childhood infections like the measles or pertussis or aspirations or any other inherent immunodeficiency. Now the list of other causes are long. Let's take a look. For example, connective tissue disorders like rheumatoid arthritis or Sjogren's can cause bronchiectasis, or other types of infection, non-TB infections, and inherent conditions like the alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, immotile cilia syndrome, or a damage to the lung tissue post-radiation fibrosis, aspiration or airway obstruction due to a tumor, foreign body or a lymph node pressing on the airways, chronic recurrent aspirations as we said, or end-stage lung fibrotic disease can also be a cause. Now, after understanding the theory behind bronchiectasis, let's see what do we see in a patient presenting with bronchiectasis. Symptoms include persistent cough with copious amount of purulent sputum worsened in the morning after lying down flat in the night, halitosis or a foul smell because of colonization of these organisms in mucus collected in the airways, or history of frequent recurrent respiratory infections, intermittent hemoptysis when there is bleeding of arteries or capillaries into the airways. On clinical examination, we see finger clubbing as in case of suppurative lung disease, crackles or wheeze over the lung fields, or inspiratory squeaks in some cases. These patients are most likely to develop complications like massive hemoptysis if there is bleeding into the airways, or a respiratory failure, and in end stages, the heart is also affected, causing cor pulmonale. So how do we investigate these patients? We do a complete blood count with differential count to see if there is an infection, sputum culture and sensitivity to find out the organism present. Pulmonary function test often shows an obstructive pattern, and bronchoscopy to show if there is any foreign body, a cancerous growth, or a lymph node which is pressing on the airways. We can do a lavage and biopsy in the same sitting. The next part of the investigation is to find out other causes, underlying causes like cystic fibrosis, where we do a sweat chloride testing, or alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency has to be investigated, or underlying genetic problems or immunodeficiency is ruled out with genetic testing and serology based on suspicion. But radiological signs are the most conclusive for bronchiectasis. For example, on a chest X-ray, we see some typical findings like the tram track sign, which are often parallel lines indicating the dilated bronchioles. There are cystic shadows and ring shadows, crowded bronchial marking extending to the periphery. Coming to high resolution CT, which is more conclusive than a chest X-ray taken. So let's look at the findings on a high resolution CT for bronchiectasis patients. There is airway dilatation or bronchiolar dilatation with mucus within, giving a tree in bud pattern, or there are signet ring sign, which is a signet cell appearance of a dilated airway. The black shadow shows an airway which is 1.5 to 2 times dilated, while the white opacity shows the cross section of an artery, pulmonary artery. Or there is honeycomb appearance, in some cases lung cysts which are filled with pus, or lack of bronchi tapering. The bronchi is dilated and is seen up to the periphery. So after investigating these patients, let's see the treatment. If the patient presents with an acute exacerbation, there is often an active infection which has to be treated with the right antibiotics, either in the oral or IV form, 7 to 10 days or even up to 14 days. Sputum culture and sensitivity helps us to decide which antibiotics should be given, but if it is not available, we begin with a broad spectrum antibiotic. More importantly, we have to improve the clearance or secretion clearance from the airways, not allowing the mucus to stay stagnant there, aiding more infection. How do we do it? Hydration of airways or mucolytics. Bronchodilators are administered through aerosolized form or hypertonic saline to keep it moisturized and to aid secretion clearance. So in addition to the medical treatment we discussed just now, there is something called the postural drainage which has to be done simultaneously to aid airway clearance. It can be chest physiotherapy, the manual method, or there is positive expiratory pressure exercises using equipments, or a chest wall oscillation vest. This shows the various postures for postural drainage which can be done under supervision. And this is the manual method which is often done by a chest physiotherapist. Now these are a few such equipments which patients can use both at home or in a clinical setting. Helps in blowing exercises. This is the oscillatory positive expiratory pressure flutter valve where the patient has this mouthpiece, blows against resistance, giving movement in the airways to bring out the sputum. This is a more sophisticated method where the patient wears a vest which is connected to an equipment. The vest gives oscillatory movements to the chest wall, helping the patients to bring out or cough out the sputum. Now coming to the other aspects of treatment. Treatment with glucocorticoids to reduce the inflammation is recommended in some cases or in short courses given in oral, IV or inhaled form. In chronic stable cases, pulmonary rehabilitation with focus on exercise and activity level of the patient is indicated. If the patient has an underlying allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, we treat it with antifungals and oral steroids during acute exacerbation. Some patients may present with massive hemoptysis due to bleeding of a pulmonary artery into the airways. These patients require intubation and further surgery in the form of vascular embolization. Or in localized bronchiectasis which does not respond to the initial lines of treatment, surgical resection where that part of affected lung is removed is considered, and in rare cases lung transplantation is indicated. These patients often suffer from recurrent exacerbations, so prevention of these exacerbations are an important factor in the treatment. Let's look at some points here. Starting with smoking cessation or exposure to any irritants. Vaccination, the flu and pneumococcal vaccinations are recommended. Postural drainage is very important to aid airway clearance, either with the manual method or using the equipments we discussed. Giving antibiotics in a preventive fashion over long term has shown to reduce exacerbation episodes. Ciprofloxacin or macrolide, which has both antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory effects, are given 1 to 2 weeks per month or 3 times per week for a long term, or they are also given in inhaled form on and off regime, 30 days on and 30 days off. These have shown to prevent exacerbations in these patients. So that was the treatment of bronchiectasis. Now let's discuss two multiple choice questions. The first question, a 40-year-old male presents with long history of productive cough, breathlessness. He had complained of halitosis, exacerbations of productive sputum, chest pain, hemoptysis. Examination shows bilateral inspiratory crackles. Which of the following treatment is likely to decrease the frequency of his exacerbations? Let's look at the options. Cyclical antibiotic therapy, inhaled corticosteroids, nebulized bronchodilators, postural drainage, surgical resection. So the question clearly paints a picture of a bronchiectasis patient, and what is the most recommended to prevent exacerbations? It can either be cyclical antibiotic therapy and postural drainage. The others are not for prevention of exacerbations. But among these, postural drainage is the most recommended because it is inevitable for bronchiectasis, treatment of exacerbation and prevention of exacerbation. So the correct answer here is postural drainage. The second question is a more theoretical one. There are many initial causes of bronchiectasis. Causes do not include, so you have to exclude from the options given. Sjogren syndrome, foreign body aspiration, pertussis, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, or pleural plaques. Now we learned numerous causes, so I hope you remember at least a few. Sjogren syndrome, for example, a connective tissue disorder is one of them. Foreign body aspiration can also cause bronchiectasis, pertussis, or childhood infections like the measles, pertussis come in the same category. Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is one of the cause. So, from the rule of exclusion, pleural plaques is not counted as a cause of bronchiectasis. So, the answer here is pleural plaques. That was all about bronchiectasis. Thanks for watching.